Morning everybody. This is then planning example 2 of unit 4 lesson 1. We are working with arrays. And in this example we're going to have a look at the following. First of all, program 94. We're going to see how we're going to work with a program that's got to use a one-dimensional array to store data. This data is read and written to a file. I am then going to discuss two topics of program 96, and that would be the form load event procedure for the main menu, and then the form closing event procedure again for the main menu. So I'll do that in the end. But first of all, program 94. If we can have a look at program 94, then we're again going to use a one-dimensional array to save names and read names. If you have a good look at it, then you'll see that you need one screen called the add names form. That's going to take a name from the user text box, and we're going to save that in an array. And then we're going to have another form, view names form. This form is going to have a list box to display some data, and then it's got three different buttons. View names, to view the names currently stored in memory in the array. Read names, to read names from a file and load it in the array. And store names, to take whatever names are in a file or in memory and save that to a file. So the processing of this program is not optimum. I would, if I'm going to give something to the user one day, rather go have a look at something like program 96. But baby steps, we need to first learn how to read names from a file and load it into an array, and then take array data and save it to a file. So we need to know how to do each of these operations. If I then open something like an example screen, then the add name section is real easy. You've written data to a one-dimensional array before, so the processing of this screen, rather simple. If I go have a look at view names, I've got a list box here. The button view names, the processing thereof should also be simple to you. It simply takes all the data that's currently stored in the array and it saves it into the list box. It displays it onto the list box. The processing of the button read all names from file, and the processing of the button store all names to file. This is new, and this is then what we are going to have a look at. So make sure that you understand exactly what we need to do and that you've got a good user interface in mind. If I now go have a look at the program. So as said before, we need to basically save names in a one-dimensional array and then read and write the array to a file. Then at module level, I will first of all need a file name, like I explained in the previous video. In order to use the exact same name all the time, better to define a constant. And then we need everything that we learned about in arrays. So I've got a maximum, I've got 500 names to store. I've got an array for my names, and I've got an array counter to tell me how many items I've got at this stage saved. So form add names, as I said before, should be general knowledge at this stage to you. So I will test if the array has got space. If it's got space, I'm going to get the name from the text box, store it in the next array element, increment the array counter. I'm going to tell the user the name is saved, and then I'm going to ready the form for the next input. If the array doesn't have space, I'm going to display an error message. So once you've coded this program, a real nice way of testing if this program really works is to change the maximum. If you change it to something like 5, it's easy to see whether you can handle 5 names, whether your program functions correctly. Okay, so one of the benefits of using a constant for the number of. If I then scroll down a little bit, go have a look at form view names. We've got a show names procedure that just displays all the names in the list box. Again, also something you've coded before. And the button event procedure simply calls the show all procedure. So nothing new there. Over here I've got new processing. Button read names must read the names from a file and load it at the end of whatever existing data I might have in the array. So if the user just opens the program right at the start and then first read, then real nice, we've got some names to start with. So let's have a look at the processing steps. So declare the variables, rather straightforward. Before I read, I always need to test if the file is present. I will obviously then need to open the file to read. I've got a loop until end of file. I'm going to read a line, but before I save that line, I first need to test, do I have space in the array? If it's true, I'm going to add the name at the end and increment the array counter. Otherwise, if there's no space in the array, I'm just simply going to tell the user, no sorry, the array is full. After the loop, I always close a file. I can go display all the names that I've got, and if the file wasn't present, I display an error message. So this show names to display the array, I'd rather go and do that over here in the program. Display the names. I'm going to call the show names procedure like that. On the right hand side, I've listed the important file operation. So to test if a file is present, there's an exists method saved in the file class, and the file class is saved in the IO package. So important that we understand those type of things. Quickly tell you, if I have something like this, a namespace in the VB.NET environment is sort of like our surnames. The class is sort of like a name of a person, and then a method is sort of like an action that we're going to perform. So if I want to ask Emma Motlong to run, so in as human terms I would say Emma Motlong, run please, because we've got manners. We can say please. Now in programming terms, I'm first going to start with the surname, then the name of the class, and then the action. So that's now programming terms to say what action I want. I want to run. Who must run? Emma. Where will I find Emma? In the Motlong family. Okay? So exactly the same appears over here. I've got an IO namespace So that's the IO, input output family. All the operations dealing with input and output would be stored in this namespace. In the namespace, I've got a file class, and that file class I've got an exists method. The exists method takes a file name, and this method gives me back a boolean. It's a function. Tells me true or false, and I can use this boolean in the if statement. So that whole thing gives me a true or a false. I can say I want to test if the result is returned is a true, but more advanced programmers will not really use that. I'm going to leave it here for now. I'll maybe just highlight it. Okay, so we need to know what this line means. Don't just copy it off by heart. In the IO namespace, there's a file class. The file class have got an exists method. It takes a string, the file name, as a parameter, and that gives us back a true or a false. I can test in an if statement if the file exists or not. If I want to open the file for input, I will do it like this. Infile, in this case, would be a local variable of the type stream reader. So dim infile as stream reader, or io.streamreader actually, would appear where I define the variables. Okay, infile is of the type stream reader. Stream reader, again, another class that's coded, and it's io.streamreader because the IO namespace is used for everything that stores files. Now I've got a loop. Do while the input file doesn't give me a -1 when I call the peek function. So peek is a function in the class stream reader. Why in the class stream reader? Because I've created infile of the type stream reader. So I know peek would be a function in that class. Readline is also a function in that class. It reads a whole line, and I'm storing the data in name. Now I can't just save the data in an array. We always need to check before I use an array. Do I have space? If it's a yes, save the name, increment the array counter. Nice the messages. Say if the array is full, I will give a message. If there's no file, a nice message. And I need to remember to always close the file. Really, when you want to use a file, open, loop to read, close the file. Do I have all of that? And obviously inside the loop, I will need to read a line. If I have a look at the button store names, so here when the user clicks on the button, we need to save everything that's an array to a file. So I will need to open the file for create mode that was specified in the question. In the specifications, I will need to traverse my array. So, as always, sorry, from 0 to count -1. I will write the name to the file, and after the loop, close the file. And my statement should look something like this. So, open the file. This will create the outFile object. Loop to traverse the array. Call the writeLine method, and what will I write? My counter will traverse the array 0, 1, 2, etc. So every name that's saved, and close the file right at the end. So now if I am to run this program, there we go, ran the program. If I go have a look at view names, click on view names, then nothing initially in the file or in the array. I start with blank names. First time that I run the program. So if I am going to save some data, I first need to know what I want to do. So if I go have a look at some test data, then right at the start I want to add a few names. Let's add Emma and Sarah. Then I want to view, and Emma and Sarah would be displayed in the list box. This is still just in memory. If I go add a name, let's just go for Ben. If I go view again, then Ben would be displayed as well. If I now go right to file, then this file would be created for me. So now if I stop the application and start it again, just to clear the memory, if I'm immediately going to read from file and then choose view names, then I should see Emma, Sarah, Ben, if my application works perfectly fine. So let's go have a look. I am just going to maybe minimize this a little bit so that I can see my test data as well. Okay, no data added initially. So let's go for Emma and then for Sarah. If I close that, go to view names, not displayed immediately, I first need to click on the button. And there I've got Emma and Sarah. So if I go add another name, we add Ben. And if I click on view names now, I've got Emma, Sarah and Ben. There we go. If I now go and click store all the names to the file or write all names, I get a confirmation, it's saved to a file, message that I display. So if I go and exit the application, it's perfectly fine. If I run it again, so yeah, I just started the program. If I go click on view names and right at the start click on the view names button, nothing is displayed. We just started the program, no data in memory. So if I scroll down a little bit, I did stop the application and start it again so that our memory was cleared. If I now go click on read all names, and voila, view names, it's called automatically Emma, Sarah, Ben is saved. So if I just go and add one more name, let's go for Nku. If I go click on view names, it's all fine. If I close the program, I didn't save to a file, and then I start the program again. If I go to view names and I read the names from a file, there's no Nku. Why? Me, the user, I didn't click on the store the names to a file right at the end. So if I do so, let's go save Nku in the array, go to view names, then save the names to a file. And now if I stop the application and I start it again, if I read the names from the file, then only is Nku saved. Okay? So my program saved the data in the array to a file, again read the data from the file, those two. But at this stage it's operations that the user must perform manually. And that brings me to programs 96. I don't want the user to have to go click on a button to save the data in a file. And I don't want the user to need to go click on a button to read the data from a file. So, in the main menu, if I can read from a file at the start of the program, that's done in the form load event procedure, it would be terrific. And then, as soon as the user closes the program, I want to save the data automatically to a file. Okay, so that I don't need the user to manually read from a file and save to a file like Program 94 does. Users going to forget to write. Okay, I don't want that. So Program 94 asks you to read the data from the file if the file exists in the form load event procedure. So you might ask me, what's the form load event procedure? And here I'm going to tell you, oh boy, guess what? It's something that you are all too familiar with. Sorry. If I go to the Solution Explorer in the main menu program, if I double click on the form, what opens? An event procedure called load. So this event procedure is called once at the start of the program. So at the start of the main menu. Okay, because I have clicked on Form Main Menu. And this would now be where I will read from a file. All those operations that you just did, test if the file is there, loop until end of file, this would be the best space or place to do so. How do I get to now the other event procedure? Form load is easy, and you've done it plenty times in the past by accident. Double click on the form load event procedure opens. To close the file, or to select the event procedure that's called when the file is closed or the application is closed automatically, little bit more complicated. So in VB, there's two checkboxes right at the top of the design screen, the code screen where I code my statements. If I go choose the leftmost checkbox and I go to the Form Main Menu Events and I choose the rightmost checkbox, Form Load is coded, that's why it's highlighted. I always need to go just look for the thing. It's just called closing in Java. It's called form closing in VB. Be careful. There's a form closed past tense and a form closing. Now, remember KFC Zinger Wings. We all love them. You always want to go pick the zing option. Closing. If I click there, the form closing event procedures automatically selected, and this is called once at the end of the program, your application. So when the menu is closed, doesn't matter how, whether it's via the file option or the Windows Close button. And this is where I'm going to write to normally a new file. So you're going to create the file, use create mode to save all the data. Okay? The specifications per program can differ, but under normal circumstances we would do these two things. in the planning, what would be the event type? Form closing or form load? To read or to write. And the name, the form name and load and closing. Okay? So it's only the what is the event and what is the name of the event procedure that's different. Rest of the statements exactly the same. Okay, so hope you've got have fun. Hope you guys manage with the programs. Thank you.